Wake up, children. Remember the light when the darkness comes.
Listen closely. If you are quiet, the forest will whisper its secrets.
The day the river of Omu vanished, the fish did not die. They disappeared. The birds stopped singing before sunrise. The wind refused to enter the village. Even the ancient baobab tree that had stood for hundreds of years shed its leaves in a single night. Then, just before dawn, every child in Omu woke from the same terrifying dream. A woman's voice whispered, "You chased away the one who could hear the earth. Now the earth will no longer hear you." By sunset, the only river in the village had become nothing but cracked mud. And the greatest secret in Omu was buried by the people themselves. Long before roads reached the forest, before strangers crossed the great rivers, and before the kingdoms beyond the hills knew the name of Omu, there stood a village blessed beyond imagination. Nestled between emerald forest and golden grasslands, Omu was embraced by nature itself. Birds nested fearlessly among the rooftops. Antelopes grazed without fear near the farms. The mighty river Aesi curved around the village like a silver necklace, never running dry, even during the hottest seasons. People believed the ancestors had chosen Omu as their resting place. Every harvest was plentiful. Every child drank clean water. No family ever slept hungry. Travelers journeyed for weeks just to witness the miracle of Omu's endless abundance. But blessings have a dangerous companion: greed. As generations passed, the village slowly forgot the wisdom that had built it. Instead of honoring those with kind hearts, people began honoring only those with heavy pockets. The richest families became the village elders. The largest landowners decided every law. The merchants controlled every market. If you had wealth, your voice carried across the village square. If you were poor, you barely existed. The villagers even had a cruel saying: "An empty pocket carries an empty mind." They repeated it so often that even children believed it. Yet hidden among the poorest homes lived someone the village never truly saw. Her name was Adana. She was barely 19 seasons old. She owned no farmland, no cattle, no jewelry, no expensive woven cloth. Her tiny mud house rested at the edge of the forest where few villagers dared to wander after sunset. People mocked her constantly. "There goes the girl who speaks to leaves. Perhaps she'll marry a monkey. Maybe the trees will feed her." Children laughed whenever she walked through the market carrying baskets of herbs. Adults shook their heads. Such a waste. If only she spent her time earning money. But Adana never answered their insults. Instead, she smiled. She greeted everyone with respect, even those who refused to greet her back. Every morning before sunrise, she disappeared into the forest. Not to hunt. Not to gather firewood. She simply walked. Barefoot. Listening. She placed her hands upon ancient trees. She touched stones warmed by yesterday's sun. She sat beside flowing streams for hours without speaking. To everyone else, she looked completely alone. But she wasn't. Because nature answered her. Not with words like people used. The river changed its rhythm. The wind carried warnings. Birds altered their songs. Leaves trembled differently depending on who entered the forest. She understood them all. Her grandmother had taught her. Many years before, when Adana was only 6 years old, her grandmother would lead her deep into the forest carrying nothing but a walking stick. "There are two languages," grandmother would say. "The first belongs to humans. The second belongs to creation. The first can lie. The second never does." At first, little Adana had nothing. Only birds. Only insects. Only wind. But as seasons passed, the forest slowly opened itself to her. She learned that termites built taller mounds before heavy rains. She learned that frogs sang differently when rivers would flood. She learned that bees abandoned certain flowers whenever sickness approached nearby villages. Nature always whispered. Most people simply forgot how to listen. Her grandmother had once been known across many kingdoms as a healer unlike any other. People traveled for days seeking her wisdom. She accepted no gold, no cattle, no gifts. Health, she would say, is not merchandise. Some respected her. Others called her foolish. When she grew old, she took Adana's hands beneath the oldest baobab tree in the forest. You will inherit something greater than herbs, she whispered. You will inherit listening. Then she added words that haunted Adana long after her grandmother joined the ancestors. The earth remembers every promise made upon it. Adana never understood those words. Not completely. Until the drought came. Life in Omu continued as usual. The wealthy competed to build larger compounds. Village leaders demanded higher taxes from struggling farmers. Merchants secretly mixed sand into their grain to increase profits. The poor worked harder each season while growing hungrier. Yet no one believed disaster could ever visit Omu. After all, the river AC had never failed. Never. Not even once. One market morning, Adana entered the village carrying medicinal leaves for an elderly widow whose legs had swollen painfully. As she crossed the marketplace, she noticed something strange. The birds were silent. Not a single swallow circled above the market. She looked toward the sky. Dark clouds gathered. Yet there was no scent of rain. Instead, the wind carried dust. She frowned. That had never happened before. Nearby, traders argued loudly over the price of yams. Children chased goats between market stalls. Nobody else noticed. Adana knelt and pressed her palm against the ground. The soil felt uneasy, almost frightened. Her heartbeat quickened. She hurried toward the riverbank. The moment she reached the water, every hair on her arm stood upright. The river was flowing. But not naturally. It moved too slowly. Almost reluctantly. Like someone walking while carrying unbearable sorrow. Then, she heard it. Not with her ears. Inside her heart. The half-forgotten. She stepped backward. Her breathing became shallow. Again. The whisper came. They have forgotten the promise. Adana looked around. No one stood nearby. Only the river. Only the wind. Only the rustling reeds. What promise? She whispered. The river answered only with silence. That evening, the wealthy elders gathered beneath the great meeting tree. Chief Elder Obior adjusted his expensive leopard skin robe before addressing the crowd. Our prosperity grows every year. Cheers erupted. Our storehouses overflow. More applause. Our future has never been brighter. Everyone celebrated. Only Adana remained troubled. Standing at the edge of the gathering, she watched the hawk circle overhead. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it flew away from the village. Every dog began whining. Goats pulled violently against their ropes. Even babies started crying without reason. Nature was trying to warn them. Adana stepped forward. Elders, she called respectfully. The crowd turned. Some sighed. Others rolled their eyes. It is the herb girl again. Chief Elder Obiora forced a smile. What troubles you now? Adana bowed. I fear something terrible is approaching. Laughter spread across the gathering. She continued anyway. The river is speaking. More laughter. The birds have stopped singing. Someone shouted. Maybe they grew tired of listening to you. The crowd erupted. Adana waited patiently. The earth says Omio has forgotten a promise. This time the laughter became thunderous. Chief Elder Obiora raised his hand. Silence returned. My daughter, he said with forced kindness, wealth builds villages. Not fairy tales. The people applauded. You should spend less time talking to trees. Even Adana's neighbors laughed. She lowered her head. Not from shame. From sadness. Because she knew. Nature never won without reason. As the meeting ended, her eyes drifted toward the ancient baobab standing beyond the village. Its largest branch had cracked. Without wind. Without lightning. Without a sound. Far above, the last bird abandoned its nest. And somewhere beneath the earth, something ancient awakened. The morning after the village meeting arrived with a silence no one could explain. Usually, dawn announced itself with the cheerful songs of weaver birds, the crowing of roosters, and the laughter of children running to fetch water from the river AC. Not this morning. The birds were gone. The roosters refused to crow. Even the dogs hid beneath their owners' huts with their tails tucked tightly between their legs. An old woman named Momankem was the first to notice something was terribly wrong. She balanced an empty clay pot on her head and walked toward the river as she had done every morning for nearly 60 years. As she approached, her footsteps slowed. Her eyes widened. The clay pot slipped from her hands and shattered on the ground. The river had vanished. Where sparkling water had flowed for generations, there was now nothing but cracked earth stretching as far as the eye could see. Fish bones lay scattered across the dry riverbed. Boats rested awkwardly on hardened mud. The air itself felt lifeless. Momankem let out a scream so piercing that people came running from every corner of the village. Within minutes, hundreds stood along the empty riverbank. Some fell to their knees. Others cried openly. Many simply stared in disbelief. It cannot be. Where did the water go? This is impossible. Chief Elder Obiora pushed through the crowd. He looked at the dry riverbed, then laughed nervously. There is no need for fear, he announced loudly. It must have flowed underground. It will return by tomorrow. The people desperately wanted to believe him. So they did. Tomorrow came. The river remained empty. 3 days passed. The wells began drying up. 7 days passed. The crops started turning yellow beneath the relentless sun. 2 weeks later, the once green farms surrounding Omio had become fields of brittle brown stalks. The cassava shriveled. The yam vines withered. The maize bent lifelessly toward the earth. Farmers who had never known failure stood helplessly watching months of labor disappear before their eyes. Children began crying from thirst. Goats collapsed beneath trees. Even the mighty cattle could barely stand. Still, the wealthy elders insisted everything was under control. We have enough food in our storehouses, Elder Obiora declared. There is no reason to panic. But panic had already arrived. At first, the wealthy families locked themselves inside their large compounds, believing their riches would protect them. Their private wells dried up. They dug deeper. Still no water. They sent servants to neighboring villages. The servants returned empty-handed. The drought had not touched the surrounding villages. Only Omio. That frightened everyone. Because droughts came from the sky. This one had chosen a single village. Rumors spread like wildfire. The ancestors are angry. No. It is witchcraft. It must be a curse. The forest spirits have abandoned us. Each explanation was more frightening than the last. Yet none answered the most important question. Why Omio? Only Adana seemed unsurprised. She had spent every day since the river disappeared deep inside the forest, searching for answers. She listened to the trees. She watched the insects. She followed the paths of wandering animals. One afternoon, she noticed something strange. Every animal in the forest avoided one particular clearing. Birds flew around it. Antelope refused to cross it. Even snakes slithered away. At the center stood the oldest baobab tree in the entire region. Its trunk was wider than 5 men standing shoulder to shoulder. Its roots disappeared deep into the earth like the fingers of a giant. This was where her grandmother had brought her many years ago. As Adana approached, a cool breeze brushed against her face. For the first time in weeks, the forest spoke. Not in whispers. In words she could finally understand. Child of listening. She froze. Her heartbeat thundered inside her chest. Who speaks? The earth remembers. The voice seemed to come from everywhere. From the roots. From the leaves. From the soil beneath her feet. You seek the river. Yes. You seek the drought. Yes. Then you must first seek the promise. Adana closed her eyes. My grandmother spoke of a forgotten promise. Silence. Then the earth answered. Long before Omu became wealthy, its people made a covenant. Images suddenly flooded her mind. She saw men and women from centuries ago kneeling beside the river Aesi. They carried no gold. No weapons. No crowns. Only seeds. Children. And hope. An elderly woman stood before them wearing white cloth. She raised a calabash filled with clear water. The river gives life freely, she declared. So shall we. Every villager repeated after her. We shall never deny water to the thirsty. We shall never sell what belongs to the earth. We shall never value riches above life. If we break this promise. The old woman poured the water onto the ground. May the earth close its hands against us. The vision disappeared. Adana gasped. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She finally understood. The drought was no accident. It was the consequence of a promise forgotten generations ago. That evening she searched through the few belongings left by her grandmother. Inside an old woven basket hidden beneath sleeping mats, she discovered a bundle wrapped in faded animal skin. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside lay a brittle scroll made from treated bark. The ink had faded, but the words remained readable. It was written by the village's first healer. It told the history of Omu. Generations earlier, no one owned the river. No one paid for water. Travelers drank freely. Strangers were welcomed. Even enemies were offered water before conversations began. Water belonged to everyone because life belonged to everyone. Then prosperity arrived. Greedy leaders fenced sections of the river. The wealthy charged the poor for water. Widows walked farther than anyone else because they could not pay. Travelers were turned away. The covenant was broken. Year after year. The earth waited. Generation after generation. The warning was ignored. Until finally, the river remembered. Adana closed the scroll and whispered. So this is the secret. Meanwhile, chaos consumed Omu. Food prices doubled. Then tripled. Merchants who had once smiled warmly now demanded outrageous prices for tiny bags of grain. The rich bought everything. The poor went hungry. Neighbors stopped trusting one another. One family accused another of stealing water. Two brothers fought over the last filled clay pot. A woman collapsed in the marketplace from dehydration. No one had enough to help. Children who once played together now wandered silently through dusty streets. The laughter that had once filled Omu had disappeared. So had hope. One evening, the village elders gathered once more beneath the great meeting tree. This time, no one applauded. Chief Elder Obiora looked years older. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His expensive robe hung loosely over his shrinking frame. Elders, he began quietly. Our sacrifices have failed. The village priest had offered goats. Nothing changed. The hunters had searched for hidden streams. Nothing. The blacksmiths dug new wells. Nothing. The merchants sent gifts to neighboring kingdoms asking for help. No one understood what was happening. Then one elder cleared his throat. There is one person we have not asked. Silence fell over the gathering. Everyone knew who he meant. No one wanted to say her name. Finally, old Mama Kem spoke. The girl. Another elder frowned. The one who speaks to trees. Mama Kem nodded slowly. When the river disappeared, I remembered something. She warned us. The words hung heavily in the air. For the first time, the proud leaders were forced to confront a painful truth. The poorest person in Omu had been the only one who saw disaster coming. The following morning, a procession unlike any in the village's history walked toward the edge of the forest. At its front walked Chief Elder Obiora. Behind him came the council. Behind them came merchants, farmers, hunters, widows, children. Nearly the entire village followed. No one spoke. They finally reached Adana's small hut. She was outside grinding medicinal roots. She looked up calmly as the crowd approached. No surprise crossed her face. Only quiet understanding. Chief Elder Obiora stepped forward. For several long moments, he said nothing. Then, before the eyes of the entire village, the most powerful man in Omu slowly lowered himself onto one knee. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Never before had an elder knelt before a poor villager. His voice trembled. Adana, we mocked you. We refused to listen. If there is any wisdom left that can save Omu, please, help us. Adana looked at the faces before her. The same people who had laughed. The same people who had called her mad. The same people who had treated wealth as greater than kindness. She felt no anger. Only sorrow. Finally, she spoke. I can show you the path. Hope flickered across their faces. But I cannot force you to walk it. What must we do? An elder asked desperately. Adana looked toward the silent forest. The drought is not your enemy. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd. It is your teacher. The earth has not punished Omu because it hates you. It has become silent because you first became deaf. She paused before continuing. There is a promise your ancestors made. And every one of you has been breaking it. The crowd fell silent. No one breathed. Then Adana held up the ancient scroll. This contains the truth your forefathers buried. The wind suddenly rose. Dark clouds gathered above the forest for the first time in many weeks. Lightning flashed across the distant hills. Not a drop of rain fell. Adana looked into the eyes of every elder. If you truly wish to save Omu, you must be willing to lose everything you believe belongs to you. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Their farms, their wealth, their control. Could saving the village really require all of it? No one answered. And deep beneath the ancient baobab, the earth waited for their choice.